Okay, we're now going to look at stitching the bottom seam of our exterior bag. Now, on bags like this, often there's a tendency to get things twisted. So the easiest way to ensure that your zipper and exterior panels and everything else are completely lined up is to do up the zipper. Lay them out flat, and you can see there that the zipper is not twisted, it fits perfectly, everything's hunky-dory. So if I fold my two exterior panels together, I know that my zipper is absolutely in the right place and I've not got it twisted. So I'm going to fold my two exterior panels together, and I've got my two lining panels out of the way. I'm going to make sure that they line up perfectly. And I'm going to use some clips to just join them together, making sure that... Oh, there's some rummaging going on in the other room. I don't know what's going on. Making sure that they match up perfectly on both sides. And I'm going to stitch across the bottom of my bag using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm literally just stitching along the bottom. Now, if you've got foam, if you've used foam, you'll be stitching through the foam as well. If you've used fusible fleece, you won't be, because the fusible fleece should have a 3/8 of an inch gap all the way around the outside. And this is the reason why the option for fusible fleece was given. For many people who are new bag makers, the idea of using foam, or even the idea of asking your machine to stitch through this many layers, might be a little bit intimidating. So there we go. I've just got the layers of the lining panels out of the way, and I've stitched all the way across the bottom. Now, you need to find your seam ripper. If you're a seam ripper person. For me, I don't use seam rippers very often. I tend to use a craft knife to rip my seams, which is not ideal, but that's me. So what you're going to do is you're going to remove the basting stitches that you put in along the bottom of your bag on both sides. I need to do this at the right angle for me. So use your seam ripper, or whatever is your preferred method of removing stitching. You're just going to be removing the basting stitching, not any of the construction stitching. I think this needs a nice new blade in it as well. Let's find a seam ripper, Christine, don't be lazy. Okay, let's do it with a proper implement. So I'm just going to rip out all of the basting stitches along the bottom of my bag. And if you took the advice in the previous videos, your basting stitches will probably be in a nice bright colour, so you'll be able to see which ones are the basting stitches. And you're going to do the same on both sides, because you've got basting stitches on both panels, both of the exterior panels. And then you're going to remove the foam from the seam allowance. You're going to get used to doing that. It's kind of, well, it's just, we do it a lot in bag making. And we do it because it makes the seams sit nicer. It also makes the final construction and top stitching a lot easier, because we're removing bulk. But without the foam, you get a much more slouchy bag. You can make this bag using fusible fleece, but it isn't as structured. but it's a great option for a first-time bag maker who's a bit scared about using foam, because foam can be a bit intimidating. So there we go, I've removed my basting stitches, and again I'm just going to use my big scissors and I keep them on their side as close to the stitching as I can, but not cutting through any of my construction stitches, and that allows me to remove all of the foam from the seam allowance on that side, and all of the foam from the seam allowance on that side. Right, now I'm going to open my zipper. I'm doing that from inside, and I just want to open it up enough. Sorry that I've just put that right in front of the camera, but I can kind of get inside and open up that bottom seam that I've just literally taken all that foam from, and just give it a press. Now obviously if you're using faux leather, then you can't do this. You'll have to finger press and kind of push it out as you go, but if you're using faux leather, then you're not a beginner bag maker, and I would say that you would probably know how to do that without me showing you. So there we go. Let's just open that seam up, which will make the next bit a little easier. So I'm going to turn my whole piece of work over, and you can see now it looks really peculiar. I have my two lining panels here, my bottom seam there, and my zipper's kind of suspended between the two, and that's fine. That's exactly how we want it to look. I'm just going to re-thread my machine because I pulled my thread out. And what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch along both sides of the bottom seam, which will hold the base of our bag nice and flat. Now we've opened up that seam allowance on the back by pressing it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, and it's quite kind of big and bulky and cumbersome, but it's quite doable because you just can scrunch everything in. So you can scrunch your side bits in and what have you. Your end of your zipper needs to be out of the way, and all you're going to do is you're going to increase your stitch length, and you're going to stitch, and I use an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You can use a 1/4 inch if you want to, down both sides of that central seam that you've created. When I say central, it's the center of the bottom. The sun's coming through now, starting to shine on my table. Might need to close the curtain. Can't believe I'm saying that. Just pull your zipper out of the way so you don't stitch over the zipper. You don't really need to back stitch, but again it's kind of habitual. You do it all the time without even thinking about it. And then we're going to go back and we're going to do exactly the same on the other side of that seam. Again, pulling the zipper out of the way so you don't stitch over your zipper tape. I'm just going to remove the threads, but you can see there that we've now stitched down both sides of our bottom seam, and our fabric on the inside, so the seam allowance, is all now pressed beautifully flat and kept in place. This gives the bottom of the bag a bit more structure, and by doing that allows the bottom of your bag to sit flat. If you don't do that stitching across that seam, the bottom of your bag will always sit slightly rounded, and it shouldn't sit rounded, it should sit flat so it will stand up. So there we go, that's that bit done.